Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here, the man who talks to machines. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I recently published a video on the life extension authors, and I think this is a very critical area that I want to cover again because it gets into something that is a very large multi-billion dollar business. I don't know, 5, 10, 20 billion, maybe more if we add everything up in the supplement industry, and that can entail a bunch of things. And it's all about living better and using, eating organics, cutting out so many things. And I think this is an important thing to look at because right now they are the prime people that what does supplementation do for you? And a lot of people, they really started the supplementation craze in the United States, where people started to buy lots and lots of vitamins, herbs, and minerals. Now, these have been around a long time, definitely pre 1970s, but this is when everything started. I don't remember anybody talking about supplements or taking much of it until the 80s and 90s when this started to get popular. And most of it was because of their 850-page book. Now, they're a very interesting group, Durk, Pearson, and Sandi Shaw, because they are a particular type of person, which a lot of people would give credibility to. Being highly educated, you could say that he was a sub-genius of some sort. Certainly, he excelled at very high scientific pursuits, which I think is important as well. He spent a lot of time in the aerospace military industry, apparently, working behind the scenes in development of missiles and weapon systems like most people of his generation, etc. did. And of course, his book basically is a giant research report where he accumulated a whole bunch of research reports on different chemicals and supplements that showed, particularly at that time, life extension in mostly, from what I understand, what would be rodents, which is what everything's tested on. And of course, it's always been the conclusion by scientists that a rat is like a human. Well, I would argue with that on several issues, but also rats are higher evolved than humans. I mean, let's face it. But without getting into the facts and figures of things. But, he is a guy from MIT with multiple multiple degrees, and spent a lot of time researching development. This is the type of person that everybody wants to give credit to. Over my many years and going through everything in life, I always find that the more educated a person is, the stupider they are. It's a problem. Yeah, they're educated in an area, but they make the right judgments? Can you interpret the information? It's not finding information, studying it, and regurgitating it so you get a high grade on a piece of paper. And you get a pat on the butt by your instructor. Oh, you're brainwashed now. Isn't that nice? We give you a little slip with your name on it. So the whole idea is we run into these things. I don't buy into that. Most people do, though. And they're going to wave their certificates in front of your face to say how great they are. Now, ultimately, we need some sort of training, but we've reached a certain level where people are trained to a degree that they're just brainwashed. They're not coming out with anything. We're not getting anything that works efficiently. We've got a lot of people doing things and producing results that are very unverified and pretty much 99.9% based in the profits they're going to take in their pockets. And people ignore 10 research studies that say something is bad and point to the one that is good because they are selling that. And why do we have good and bad on the same substance? This is a real problem and has been something that, as a professional researcher for over 50 years, I found that if you research anything, you're going to find it's good and it's bad. And I'm not talking about just supplements. You get people that scream how wonderful it is, and you'll have other people that scream how terrible it is, no matter what it is. So we live in a very bizarre, evil world, and we have to understand that. But Durk Pearson and Sandi Shaw were the poster childs for the next level of human evolution, particularly in regards to longevity. I mean, after all, the book was named Life Extension. And this spawned, as I said, a whole big industry. And I believe it, as I've mentioned already, it kind of spawned the whole vitamin and supplemental craze. And the problem with all these crazes are because one generation after another forgets the past. So young people of today and anybody who's not really in their 50s and above doesn't know what happened really a few years ago. As a person approaching their 70s, when I talk to people who are 20, 25, you got to remember they were, if they're 25, they were born in the year 2000. Well, an awful lot of stuff happened before that, and we've went through massive changes in some ways. We have a lot of really garbage technology that we didn't have in the past, a lot of little toys we carry with us, and, oh, how many, 4K, 5K screens? Yeah, like you can tell the difference. And all the things that we get. It's really a bunch of bogus technology that does virtually nothing for us. The entertainment industry and everything else, a little clearer screen certainly is nice. But really, what does that mean? And who even has 4K TVs or buying any discs that are now out of interest in the world? DVDs, Blu-rays, etc., or apparently not being purchased much anymore because people are streaming. And let's have the best quality you can. Stream to your phone. Oh, maybe you can put a postage stamp size phone out there because you're going to get a great experience that way. So, I mean, we go from one ridiculous thing to another. And of course, while there are some fanatics and people who spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on fancy audio equipment so they can hear the violin in the back of the that was recorded there a little better than something else, and they think that's worth $30,000. There are these kind of audiophiles that have been around since stereo equipment became very big, and that usually was in the 70s. But you got to remember, nobody knows anything. Everybody is dealing with the latest pop-up information on the latest social media, which is really nothing more than trite trash. It's just worthless. The pundits that we find all over the place, and particularly on YouTube, whether they're young or old, are really very ignorant people that have no perspective in life whatsoever. Whether they're young and they haven't learned anything yet, or whether they're old and have learned stupidity, as we constantly see from particularly the pundits, the military ex-pundits who are just a bunch of loser cowards. All the things that we have out there are one major situation and problem after another. And it's difficult to keep up on anything. We are now living in an age of information glut. And I don't even know if glut's a good word. What is something that is just unhandleable? There's so much of it, you just don't know what to do with it. So what happens is what? You either turn it off or you pick from your ignorant viewpoint what you think is good. Or even worse, what's popular. Because we all know society works perfect. So the bestseller, the best supplements, what's the bestseller? You see this on Amazon and other places. This is the bestseller. Is that a recommendation or a warning? So the bottom line is that the average populace is so ignorant that if something is popular or there's a belief system in it, this is something to be avoided. You have to do your own research, and even that. Is any research valid? Well, we have one research study after another pushing a product. That's really what they're doing. So they'll find something that is good in something because the company that paid them to do the research is expecting that. And if they bring back something else, they're going to be told that this is not what we desire. And we're not going to pay you unless you do something in what we paid you for. And as much as that sounds terrible, it makes a lot of sense. Do you really want a research company to be finding or researching things that you're not interested in as the person funding it? So there's catch-22s to everything. But we live in a world full of liars, cheats, and everybody because of the high cost of living. And everybody wants to live with a platinum spoon in their mouth and drive fancy cars and own everything, spend $5,000 on a purse, and all the things that all these idiots do. After all, you want to go do some dangerous activities because it's chic, like ski. Go down a hill with no control. Idiot stuff that people do by the millions. So, this is all the idiot realities that have always been out there, and it's never ever going to change. But we have to look at things. We always want to see well and try and judge things. So, who is this guy, Durk Pearson and Sandi Shaw? Well, these are both very highly educated in, I believe, Sandi had a degree in, was it an advanced degree? In biology from UCLA, another top school. Of course, MIT is the tippy tops of the tippy tops of science that Durk spent his time there and went from one high profile scientific job to another. So he knows what research reports are. He apparently, and she as well, has studied biology and chemistry and knows all the things of how the human body works. And of course, everything in life when you're rich and famous or just rich is the fact is that you want to live longer. I never met a rich person who didn't want to live longer. So that's the reality of it because you've got everything. And society is quite nice for the rich. You can live anywhere as a rich person, never really have any problems. And you have a natural life extension because you're able to do things to preserve your life. Find things, go to better doctors, get this treatment, get this medication. You tend to live longer just by the fact that you're wealthy. And if you look at the countries where they have the longest living populations, one of them at the very top, I believe, and people don't talk about that, is Monaco. Yeah, that's where the average person's worth about $10 million. So the whole idea is that why are they living there? Because Monaco is so great? Well, of course not. And the bottom line, these little countries with no taxes attract whom? The wealthy. So the whole idea is that you'll find that people live longer there to some degree. But here is the catch-22 again. Of course, you young ones don't even know what catch-22 was. That was a novel and, of course, made into a movie. But all you young ones have lost that as well. Nobody knows nothing. They go online, they watch the same old garbage, listen to whatever the popular crap music of the time is, wear the crap clothes, rip your jeans up, put all sorts of tattoos on your body, stick a piece of metal in your head. I mean, these kind of ridiculous things that people do, they want to be part of the crowd. Because the crowd is so good. The crowd does nothing but help and love, and we have a better society, and they're not corrupt, and they don't pollute. Oh, yeah. That's a great little cartoon. But we live in a cartoon world. After all, everybody believes in cartoon religions. So getting back to Durkee Boy, is the bottom line is that we have to assume. Now, what's interesting is that after 1980, basically, now his book was, I believe, in the late 70s. It sold many millions of copies. Everybody read it there, or tried to, I guess. I don't know how much really read an 850-page book. But they were on all the talk shows. This was something, because again, longevity, and particularly in the 70s and 80s, when life was really good in America, what did you want? You wanted to live longer. So that was the reality of it, and what goes involved with the whole movement to better health. And of course, he was very scientifically based and talked about and dealt with not only using supplements, but using what were considered chemicals like BHT to extend life, which he felt was good. And of course, as he talked about in several of his interviews. But I mean, basically, once the 80s hit, they published about 2 other books, I believe, in the late 70s. One was on diet, of course. I forget what the other one was. And then nothing was heard from them. They did do certain shows. He made a fortune from this, and I don't know what his connection to life extension supplements are or not, because in recent years, he's hooked up with somebody else. But I'm assuming he sold the name for more profit. So that company who makes supplements would use his name so they made more money. That's usually how it goes. So, what his connection with them obviously certainly didn't last, as he's hooked up with somebody else in the last 10, 15 years or what it is. But also, we have a real problem here with both of these. These are pretty odd people in general, which a lot of these kind of educated types tend to be pretty weird because they don't really jive with regular society very much. They come from nerdy backgrounds, nerdy parents usually, and they live in a nerdy world of dumbademia, which keeps them in a cocoon of stupidity. And they don't really have to do anything. They don't have to look good. They don't have to dress nice. They don't have to have personalities that are worthwhile because they have big, giant educations. If you can get A's on a whole bunch of scientific tests and get high degrees, well, everybody accepts you. So I don't really care what your social skills or anything else is. So he is quite, if you look through it, you can find lots of interviews with him. He's a quite odd person. Not only is he and Sandi unattractive people, but they dress like gypsy freaks, gypsy hippie freaks. It's just so strange. And he was always wearing, tank tops and tiny little shorts. Very odd. In general, which some of this was part of the styles of the time, but they kept that up. And of course, she, who had a voice lower than almost every man that I've ever met, he talked like it. Very, very strange. So, I mean, this is a strange couple and put out strange, particular ways of operating, looking strange, and they dressed pretty bizarre, particularly for the 80s, which was a time of people were dressing better. This was just after disco suits. People were wearing tailored clothes. They had a lot of makeup on, etc. And they wore nice clothes and everything else. So, I mean, the whole idea is that this was a special time. Well, they were dressing like gypsy hippies from, really, I'm not sure it was what planet they thought they were connected to. Now, I'm not sure why this was, unless they were just disconnected, or maybe they were told by some PR person or their producers that handled them, their agents, well, dress weird, it gets attention. We want you to be different. So I don't know, because the people who interviewed them, and you can see them in the old interviews from the late 80s and even into the early 90s, of how people were dressed, particularly at local shows. And they all were dressed in suit and ties. And this was not a time of grunge or anything else except for their weird perspective. So what are we to make of that on top of it? They also seem to have dropped out. They moved to a tiny little town in Nevada, which had a population of about 2,000 people, and they never got a peep from them. They did an occasional interview. And why is this? Now, the bottom line is she died at 78 and he died at 81. This is basic life expectancy in the United States. And for someone who is wealthy, who's taking all these supplements and has the expert medical care, this is equivalent to dying young. Because everybody around the world, unless they're in a stress situation, generally is living to 85 to 90. Now, life expectancy is about 78 in the United States now because of a lot of other things that happened recently. But in general, without getting that kind of skewed statistical data, if you research the world, everybody's living to about the same age except for a few places. And that's usually anywhere from 80 to 85. Some people are living from 85 to 95 in places like Japan and other places, which have larger life expectancies than some places in Europe. Particularly the Mediterranean place and a few. But these are kind of strange things as well. The Japanese are living long and they have a different lifestyle, different everything. I'm not sure things have to do with one particular item in general. The Japanese culture is pretty strange. It's pretty closed culture. And while their diet is interesting, it's not as good as people think. They drink a lot of whiskey, they drink a lot of beer, they do eat a fair amount of fried foods, and certainly eating raw fish and other things filled with parasites certainly shouldn't be increasing their lifespan. But they also have a very supportive society that takes care of people, from medical to assisting you in pretty much every phase of your life. That is not done anywhere else in the world that I'm familiar with when you look into the Japanese society. They also are a very deviant society, have terrible sex problems, and everything else that goes with that. So there's all sorts of pros and cons when you get into any society. So figuring out why someone lives longer is difficult, especially if you get away from the propaganda there. So the average Japanese person is drinking huge amounts of alcohol, which has been demonized in recent years as being the worst thing you can possibly take. Which, of course, is a fantasy, but of course, that's what they're going to tell you on the tubies. So the whole idea is we run into all these things that we have to be very careful of. So the point is here we have very educated people, people who are used to dealing with research reports, have delved into it, had the time and the money. And this is important. It's just not being a researcher. A lot of people know what's good for them, but they can't afford all these things. Let's look at one thing. Here's a bottle, and this is the active substance in coconuts that's supposed to be so healing, coconut oil. $35 a bottle. Here's just simple enzymes. That's $20. And here's a special, and they're getting a little, in all the years of supplements, they finally come out with something that's a little different. Here's something that helps you the most important thing, it's not what you take, it's what you basically assimilate into your body. And it has a liquid in here, and they've got different things. This even has a metal bottle. And, of course, the proverbial liquids, which, of course, is what everybody should be taking if they can. Some substances you can. But, all these are very expensive considering what they are. Supplements used to be relatively inexpensive, $7 to $10. Now everything is $25 to $50, depending on what you want. If you want something specialized, you're going to pay for it. As I said, even simple little enzymes that come from pineapples and papaya is about $20 a bottle, depending on where you're getting it and the cost. And again, cheap stuff, is it better or not? They're not regulated. We don't know what we're getting in any of our supplements, because basically nobody's enforcing fraud. Because if this says it has this ingredients in it, it should have it to the amount that it says on there. Now, apparently, nobody's checking that. And when they were checked, like certain states like New York did it, they found out that all of these supplements were cons. So I guess we can thank the honest, good, God-fearing people of the manufacturers of around the world, for that matter. But, of course, the good old USA, yeah, where all this stuff is made. The good old Mormons. And, of course, let's not forget the Texans. God-fearing, wonderful criminals. So the whole idea, as we move into all these things, we have to understand the facts that's going on. So they had the best of everything because they could easily have the money. He was quite wealthy from publishing and having very high engineering jobs in aerospace. He must have been making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and he must have made millions of dollars from his books. Why he refused to write more books and follow up on everything, I think, is a big, interesting question that doesn't talk about how people wanted privacy. It talks about the fact that something horribly went wrong as far as my conjecture of it. I don't really know what happens, and I'm not going to spend that much time trying to dig it up. And do you ever get truth from anybody? Who are we going to talk to that knows anything? It also appears to be the gossip is, and again, I'm not sure how true it was, but apparently Durk had type 2 diabetes. And of course, Sandi died at 78, which is common life expectancy for somebody who was so wealthy, was taking everything, going to all these doctors, etc. Now, Durk said that he was taking BHT, but the whole idea is that he stated also in an interview that if you take that, you got to make sure you're going to doctors who watch you all the time. And he was doing that. So it means he had the top medical care from top doctors. Of course, I don't know how he did that in the middle of Nevada there, but I guess he could travel wherever he wanted to. I'm not sure he stayed there all the time. And of course, Las Vegas isn't too far, and even Los Angeles isn't too far. So I don't know what he did and what doctors he went to, etc. But that's the one problem with living in an isolated place is you have a difficulty accessing particularly services. And the good old Amazon and mail order has been huge in the last 15 and 20 years, but not before that. So getting everything by mail, it was not all that easy either. But you certainly could get most things if you spent enough time. And of course, with the advent of the internet, you didn't have to wait for catalogs and everything else. You just went online and ordered it. So the whole idea is that God knows what else he was taking. Maybe he was taking stuff that he didn't share with the public because it was too dangerous, like BHT. BHT is a preservative which is outlawed in Europe, and it is consumed in the United States as a preservative. So it is allowed in the food supply, for better or for worse. So the whole idea is this guy has a lot of money. He's highly trained. He knows what he's talking about. And in terms of what we consider valid people, and wasn't really able to live on. He didn't look good. I'm assuming he was hiding out when he was in these small towns. He didn't want people to approach him and ask him for nutritional advice. And of course, how could he give it to it? He died young, and his wife died even younger. Pretty hard to say you know what's going on when you live to the average life expectancy in the United States of the guy who's eating trick cereal in the morning, that they're living just as long as you are with all the, I would assume, thousands of dollars of supplements that they took every year, if not tens of thousands, including adding in all the medical and so forth. So the whole idea, this brings into question, how good is supplementation in general? And this is a giant question for what is a big investment. People invest in this based on gossip and everything else. You don't know really when you take any supplement if it works generally. If you wanted to find out if your body was assimilating it and how it was working, you'd have to spend an awful lot of money on tests. People talk about vitamin D a lot now, but nobody has a vitamin D test because these are not done by your doctor. You have to pay for it. So people don't do it. So do you know the amount of vitamin D you're taking? Is that assimilating? Most of the time you find out that you take a lot of supplements and nothing has changed chemically within your body because you're not assimilating any of it. It's all being washed out. People are taking bad forms of everything. And of course, they offer you many forms of supplements. Which ones work best? Well, I can tell you 100% that if you're not taking a liquid, you're probably not assimilating much of anything. Now, some things you can't take liquids, but most things you can get in a liquid. And if you get anything in capsules, etc., it has to go through this whole digestion process, which means you're losing most of everything. So liquids are the best, and this is where you're going to find your best results from. Now, people have a mental block against that, and they think it costs more, and it doesn't. But it's really not what it costs, because if you're taking something cheap and it doesn't work, well, it's just totally thrown down the drain, your money. So the whole idea is whatever he was doing, it didn't work, plain and simple. I saw an interview of him that probably was a few years old, and he certainly didn't look good. He still got his goofball clothes and his long hair. You wonder what's wrong with people that they have the same look all their lives. It shows to me a shallow thinker, regardless of his academia high marks being identified and conditionized and certified as goofy. That's what you get from these schools. So the bottom line is that all these things, supplementation for these two people, and I'm not sure how it works for anybody, did not work. And they were doing it at the highest possible level. They had the money, even if we don't count the books into this. He was making excellent money working for aerospace as a top scientist, must be making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. He had money to retire early and move out into the middle of nowhere to hide I think he was hiding his physical condition, is the conclusion I come to. That's my personal opinion. And I think it was the same thing with Sandi. People just don't die usually, are perfect, and then all of a sudden the next day they die. Now, this happens with people, particularly with heart attacks and other things, but the bottom line is that they're sick. Now, whether they know it or not. I have a feeling they knew it and they were hiding out. Why they wanted to hide out in the middle of nowhere and not be identified easily, I have no idea. It certainly is very odd as far as I'm concerned. So this is the reality that we have to really look at how valuable are supplements. Are they worth the investment? Now, what I'm working on is turning these kind of bottles that you see here into vibrational energy supplements that your body takes in. Now, I'm not sure that's going to totally eliminate these, but it certainly should be able to cut down what you have to take and save you a fortune as you supplement physical with the energetic, which is really what everything is and what the future is. Now, people have really not put a lot of energy into this, but with my new technology and my new disc system, people will be able to save a lot of money and they will get much stronger results from physical substance, which are then backed up by informational energetic fields, vibrational energy fields. That really is what these are broken down into energy fields that your body then takes in. So why not start with that? So this is what we have to look at. And again, none of this. We still have a fancy bunch of ways at very expensive prices so that you can assimilate the actual supplements better. But we don't really have anything that gets energetically anything into your energetic fields of your body. There's a lot of nonsense going on there. There's a lot of very bad technology. And of course, we live in a roaring hell of disinformation, liars, cheats, and evil people that are just exploiting you for their own personal benefits. And they're not seeking truth. They're not really seeking to help people. What they're doing is just filling their pockets, and that's good enough for them. It's really sad how the world works, but we have to understand that. And the case of these two really brings to prominence the first major case, followed case history. Of course, we don't know all the ins and outs of it, but apparently he had type 2 diabetes. And again, he died at 81, which means he was sick for years. She died at 78. And again, they're not releasing what they died of. Another sign to tell you that their research was faulty. So the whole idea is that they were hiding, they were both sick, and they didn't want to be disgraced in public saying, gee, you look terrible, you're sick, so let's go and hide out in the middle of the desert somewhere so that we can't be identified. I think that's a pretty easy conclusion to come to. These are certainly not people that were hounded. They didn't even do any publicity after, I believe, 1990. So you're talking like 35 years we haven't heard a peep from them until they came up with and started working with another supplement maker. And of course, we know how that helped them as well. So the whole idea is like all supplements, they virtually do nothing. And if they're artificial in any way, your body doesn't really take it in hardly at all. So the only way really to get what you need is to get it through a delivery system that works the best. It's called food. But, our foods don't have the nutrients in it. We have all sorts of problems. We've messed up our entire food chain. All the animals we feed poisons to, and then we eat the animals. It's the same old story that goes on and on, as is the really boring story of planet Earth and the evil mutants that live here called Earth beings. But here we go again. These people are basically, I don't think they were frauds directly, but their entire system, their entire belief, his entire long history of working with the highest educational institutions, as well as her, who certainly UCLA is a fine school, and particularly a medical school, which I went to personally. UCLA Medical Center I'm not sure what they are now, I'm sure they are, one of the best hospitals in the world, and some of the best doctors. UCLA had a highly competitive system, and so it certainly is. So she certainly was not a loser or had some bogus degree. He, of course, had many degrees from MIT, considered one of the finest colleges in the world, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and all of it added up to nothing. I mean, as a life extension expert, both of them should have at least made it to 90. And even that I would kind of chuckled at. So what? Most people are making it to 90. They couldn't even make it past basic life expectancy of the guy who smokes and drinks and is taking heroin. Your average American loser who's 70 pounds overweight from eating tricks and garbage. So they couldn't even beat them. So this is sad but true, and we all have to recognize this and say, well, what's going on? Unless we examine these kind of things and take things that happen and look at what's happening there, we're all going to continue to support fools, losers, and people that exploit us. Until next time.